Everyone and everything that's ever lived, destroyed instantly. Precise enough?
Including my son.
Yes, that's what killing you means.
I wasn't going to do this. Like, I swear, I had no plans to talk about this at all. I had 5,000 words ready to go about Mank and why I think it's great in one of the year's best movies. Side note, Mank is great in one of the year's best movies. Go watch it if you haven't. But then it turned out none of the clips I needed could be found on YouTube, and that script doesn't work in any format but video, so I guess it's staying on my hard drive until further notice. Sorry for the inconvenience. Look, I know I did a whole 45 minutes on Christopher Nolan's strengths and weaknesses and all the ways I think he's talented as a filmmaker and how he can be better, ending with the note that I hadn't seen Tenet yet, but the line "don't try to understand it, feel it," forecasted a probably entertaining but intellectually malnourished science fiction action narrative, largely indicative of Nolan's pathological fear of or refusal to pick a side, so to speak, on his ideas, leading to a largely unimportant filmography of borderline delusionally self-important films. But that was supposed to be it. It was just an encouragement to do better, and I really hoped he would. I promise I'm not obsessed with this. It's not my mission to take Nolan down a peg everywhere I can. I just like watching and thinking and talking about movies. I wasn't going to follow it up with a Tenet review expanding on that thesis because there was very little the guy could do at this stage in his career that would be radically different enough to warrant any further discussion. And then I saw Tenet. Oh boy. It doesn't feel great that I'm following up on my last video in which I spent way too long making this.
Just let me do something good.
With something so unabashedly negative. So I'm going to try to keep this focused on as much analytical criticism and commentary as possible. There are plenty of reviews and takedowns and reactions all over YouTube already. This isn't just going to be me complaining about all the things that don't make sense or saying I'm confused, therefore it's bad. I promise I'm not just here to say that I hated Tenet, or that it's one of the worst movies I've seen all year, or that it made steam come out of my ears with rage directed at everyone involved, but especially Nolan himself for mortally wounding the entertainment industry by choosing to use this movie as the rallying point to save theatrical distribution based on nothing but the bloated, ego-driven assumption that people like his stuff that much and long before it was safe even to watch.
I'm the protagonist.
All of that is true, but that's not what this is about. And if at any point I sound particularly incensed at the director, cast, or studio, sorry, but oh well. Maybe that'll help the view count go up. So, let's talk about Tenet. Tenet isn't just a bad movie, it's that very specific kind of bad movie that only a financially divined capital C cinema blockbuster auteur has the clout to make and the ego to believe they can make work. Because the man behind Warner Brothers' most enduringly beloved comic book movies, several Oscar wins, and the most profitable movies on the studio's slate not tied to any franchise IP, is the only person who could ever have walked into a pitch meeting with this script and walk out of it with a check.
Including my son.
It's absolutely bananas, overblown, temporal, technobabble nonsense, but played straight with all the sincerity and deftness of craft that only served to highlight how little I enjoyed any of it. I posited in the previous Nolan video that over a decade of being hailed online as God's gift to the cinema for the sheer audacity of having ideas may have gone to the filmmaker's head and he actually believes it now, but Tenet all but confirms it. Tenet is what happens when a bankable auteur director is never told no. No, Chris, you can't name your main character the protagonist. That's stupid. No, Chris, you don't need this whole subplot about a forged drawing that disappears halfway through the movie. No, Chris, you have to give your audience time to wrap their head around how inversion works. No, Chris, you can't mix your ambient sound to be louder than your dialogue. I promise you, it isn't that important, your audience won't care, and they'll probably thank you for it. I still wish Christopher Nolan would develop either the vision or the courage to inject his ideas with some perspective, but in this case I'd settle for just having a grip on them. Not only does Inversion offer no perspective on time and have the whole movie become Nolan's first time writing nakedly about nothing, but the script fails to establish any level of trust from its audience, and the nature goes so unclarified that the inverted visual effects can't even be marveled at without first having to wrap your head around how the rules of the story world validate them. If I wasn't certain that to watch a Marvel movie would cause the man to spontaneously combust, I would say I think Christopher Nolan watched Doctor Strange, saw the climactic third act, and said, I want to do that, but worse.
Breaking the laws of nature, I know. Well, don't stop now.
Let me be clear, Tenet's not a failure because I can't understand its centerpiece gimmick, it's a failure because I don't care to understand it. There's a certain level of confusion that's just accepted and expected with time travel movies because that's how time travel works. That's why mind-bending sci-fi thrillers excite us, and it's especially why we watch them over and over again. But I can't even imagine wanting to watch Tenet even one more time when its plot is so jumpy, so random, and so skeletal in its construction that the screenplay honest to God left me with no idea what the motivation is for anything that happens in this movie, or even what any character's connection is to any other. Who is this? Why is this happening? She's married to him? Why? They don't look like they ever even liked each other. They're friends? Okay, I guess. Even without the inversion mechanic tossing this amorphous bad screenplay into a hammy science fiction salad, not one of Tenet's beats feels justified. Most movies can deftly compensate for such narrative defects by counting on their characters to emotionally guide the audience through them. But Tenet doesn't have any characters. It has faces. Just handsome people who in between action set pieces either look confused, narrate what will happen next, look menacing, or talk about their son and be afraid of their husband because that's how women work.
Women are involved, but it's never really about the women. It's about me.
It doesn't need emotional stakes, I can hear the movie try to defend. The whole world is going to end, so that's all the motivation the protagonist needs.
Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it!
No! James Bond movies can only pull that off because Bond's character is dynamic and interesting deliberately in spite of his motivation. 007 gets paid to save the world, but his luxurious power fantasy enjoyment of drinking martinis, driving sports cars, using fun new gadgets, wooing love interests, and his cool-headed wit is what keeps the character going and us coming back to these movies for over 50 years and counting. John David Washington has none of this. What's more, he is the focal point of Tenet's story but has no idea what's going on within it. Why should I feel invested in your save the world tension if your world isn't worth saving? Why should I worry about stopping the apocalypse when your script does the bare minimum of its genre, guaranteeing a happy ending regardless? I was never rooting for the protagonist, and Kenneth Branagh's performance was far too off-putting to have me rooting for Sator either. I was just rooting for the movie to end.
But this is where our worlds collide.
Between this and Dunkirk, somehow Christopher Nolan has convinced himself that he can streamline the entire screenwriting process by relying completely on star power or charisma as characterization, and then letting the characters guide the plot. But at no point do the protagonist's actions feel believable and or logical. Things just happen in this movie because we are told that they have to. They make sense. Trust us. Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
Here's the thing about that. Don't try to understand it, feel it, only works in your movie when your movie has the basics to make me feel anything. I don't have to fully understand how drifting works in Pacific Rim, because I can feel the hulking awesome might of the Jaegers and Kaiju and I can see the result. I don't have to perfectly get how the body-switching story device works in Your Name, because I can feel how it affects and changes the two protagonists at the center of it. I don't have to know how to perceive nonlinear language and time at Arrival because the emotional catharsis is so closely tied to its practicality. But what all of those movies and more have in common that make them so narratively successful and entertaining that you still don't seem to get is that they do try to help me understand them. They understand that the storytelling experience is a two-way street and an audience won't just blindly trust a director no matter how many Batman movies he's made. They understand that the audience's comprehension of a new concept alongside a protagonist or hero figure to whom they can connect is what makes them interesting and even beloved in the first place. Infinitely more than the director's basic ability to show them something that deliberately clashes with their perceiving the forward progression of time.
It's inverted. Its entropy runs backwards. We think it's a type of inverse radiation triggered by nuclear fission. Someone's manufacturing them in the future. They're streaming back at us. You have to have dropped it. Your point of view, you caught it, but from the bullet's point of view, you dropped it. Either way we run the tape, you made it happen.
Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
I mean, my God! Even Inception got this right. Every character feels distinct and has a purpose for being there. Dream sharing was alien to us, but the dialogue worked hand in hand with the visuals and found organic ways to inject exposition into the narrative so that it was never unwelcome. I could understand the stakes of every level of the dream heist on both a character and a story level, and I knew what success and failure meant to Leonardo DiCaprio. What was it that Eames said again?
No, it's not just about depth. You need the simplest version of the idea in order for it to grow naturally in your subject's mind.
What happened to that, Chris? Why is your scientist character in a lab coat? You know, the universal cinematic symbol for person who understands what's going on and can tell the audience about it, telling your audience not to try to understand the next 2.5 hours of James Bond fanfiction you're about to put them through. Why are you inviting me into this hyper-serious world of action and espionage to imagine the impossible, but keeping it all behind a velvet rope of obfuscation?
Tell me!
Has man's imagination officially exceeded his reach? Did you finally have more ideas and ambition than you knew what to do with? Did the idea just get away from you?
Missed it by that much.
Or is it just about showing us how you can experiment with the rewind button while playing dress-up as an apocalyptic spy thriller? Alright, I've put it off long enough. Let's talk about the ideas. At the end of the last Nolan video, I argued that don't understand it, feel it was a bad sign for the impact of this movie, and if Nolan did indeed discourage his audience from intellectually engaging with it, all he'd have is another Michael Bay movie for thinking people, as well as being a box office catastrophe. I'd now like to amend that statement. That comparison gives Tenet entirely too much credit. Thinking people are the last demographic Nolan is reaching for with this film. And no, I can't just turn my brain off and have fun with the movie because your plot hasn't effectively bridged the gap to its suspension of disbelief, and because your movie isn't fun. Despite its light dusting of themes like international terrorism, Cold War legacy, espionage, spousal abuse, art fraud, apocalyptic nihilism, and probably more that I'm forgetting, all underneath the catalyzing duh of climate change, Nolan doesn't want his audience thinking about any of it. Unlike Dark Knight Rises, Nolan isn't interested in even raising these topics in his audience's heads. It doesn't ask any questions, it doesn't leave us thinking about characters or themes. Every character or MacGuffin is only there to be moved around in the action set pieces. It's a gigantic look what I can do.
Whoa.
We aren't meant to attach any pre-existing biases to the ideas on display, because we aren't meant to carry anything into or out of this movie.
Including my son.
Even if we were, what would that takeaway be? That we are dooming ourselves so completely with climate change that our propensity to self-destruct is nearing utter redundancy? If that's the case, are we saying Sator was right? If he's not, why is absolutely none of the cinematic language in service of spotlighting or countering humanity's self-destructive nature? Sator gets killed before he can invert the world and the human race gets to keep ignorantly marching toward its doom? It's not clear if Tenet, the group, is even interested in stopping the war with its own future, or if they're just here to play with their toys and maintain the status quo. To which I ask, what's the point? Did Nolan even realize how self-defeating his script is here? And if he did he truly think that didn't matter? It would still be nice for Nolan to treat his audience like grown-ups and actually explore his themes and ideas with more depth than an 8th grader's short story, but Tenet attempts to be such a bold shot in the dark for sci-fi that it's an almost comical misfire. It fails so completely on several basic storytelling levels, and you can sense its pride in every single one. The movie misses every chance it had to get me to care about it, and does so expensively and spectacularly that I'm forced to ask, guys, did Christopher Nolan bet the future of movies on his galaxy brain ascendance delusion that he can make tentpole movies without characters, themes, or any audience investment?
Is this it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman?
No, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about this. If the last 10 months have taught us anything, it's that this society literally will not survive if we continue to massage the egos of narcissists. If this movie could manage to justify itself for even half a second's worth of intrigue, that would be one thing. Releasing theatrically in the middle of a pandemic is wrong and egomaniacal regardless of its quality, but good movies deserve to be seen. I get it. Fair enough. But Chris, you huffed the fumes of your box office successes to the point of actually believing that you could be the savior of movie theaters. You wanted millions of people to risk their lives just to see your movie. There's a very real chance that some people have died because of it, and all for a movie this uninteresting and unsatisfying and, yeah, I'm gonna say it, this bad. I'm at a loss for words. I spent 5.5 years working at movie theaters gleefully laughing at people who felt entitled to their money back because they didn't like the movie they just watched. But if I was actually dumb enough to go out and pay to see this movie in September, I would have demanded the refund. No movie is worth risking my life to see, but this one probably least of all. And let's just take a second and imagine if he was right. Let's just think about what America would look like right now if Tenet got the same box office mid-pandemic as it would have without it. 400,000 people are dead right now. Over 20 million cases, and this guy wanted us all packed in like sardines in theater lobbies and auditoriums for 3 hours watching whatever this was against every CDC guideline we have. How many theater employees would have been put in danger? How many more deaths? But at least the theaters would have profited. So do you know what I say to the fact that this movie's, and let's not mince words here, complete historic ruination has reshaped the future of Warner Brothers overnight?
Well, Mr. Krabs, do you want to know what I think?
Fine. No, I don't love it. I like movie theaters as much as anyone, but if it truly is the dawn of a new era of streaming, then so be it. I'm glad people will be safe. I'm glad I'll still get to see the new movies I'm looking forward to with unprecedented ease of access. I'll definitely miss the theatrical experience for some of them, but I can live without it. I don't know if Tenet was supposed to be the beginning of a new phase for Christopher Nolan, or the continuation of something that already began with Interstellar or Dunkirk, but frankly, I'm kind of smugly gratified that in all likelihood we'll never find out, because it's highly improbable that a studio will give him that much money and control ever again.
In terms of money, we have no money.
Every studio that chose to delay their movies did so purely for financial reasons. But every single one of them is going to be better regarded on release because no one has to factor risking their lives into their critique. But now Tenet is always going to be branded as the movie whose cinema purist director thought it was grandiose and important enough to defy and disprove all of that. And add bonus points for also dismantling its storytelling and magnifying its action budget to such a degree as to only technically still function as a movie.
I'm the protagonist.
I truly don't understand the free pass this movie thinks it deserves for its writer-director doing the barest minimum required work as a storyteller for a meaningless, inaudible, more intelligent than thou 2.5-hour headache. I went into this hoping to be surprised but expecting to be disappointed. I knew this probably wasn't going to be the deep, introspective, and interesting movie I used to believe Christopher Nolan could make, but maybe it would still have something worth watching like his movies always do. Instead, I came out of it in utter disbelief. Disbelief and anger and mirthless laughter because just... wow! I still don't even fully understand the vortex of appallment Tenet stirred within me, just that none of it is good. But you want to know what? I don't have to understand it. I feel it. Next time, I don't know, maybe I'll do a top 10 or something.